A crystal glass rises, a terrified man flinches. Candlelight catches the scar above Alessandro Moretti's brow. Then, in the breathless silence of a luxury restaurant, Isabella Rossi does the impossible. She touches the untouchable. Her fingers lock around his wrist, and for one suspended second, the entire city seems to stop breathing with them. But that is only the beginning, because the real tragedy starts later when she learns the sick brother she was destroying herself to save was lying, and the monster in front of her may have been waiting for her world to collapse.
Chicago's epicenter of fear is not a penthouse. It's table 12 at Lucia's Ristorante, where Alessandro Moretti sips his espresso. His influence dwarfs the mayor's, a fact the staff internalizes as a code of deference. Gazes lowered, hands steady, eyes never meeting his. Isabella Rossi, however, operates by a different code. When a veiled, vicious threat emanates from Moretti's table, she doesn't retreat. She sets down her tray, approaches the nucleus of power, and confronts him directly. "Sir," her tone is crystalline ice. "We forbid that kind of language here." His retort, "Do not tempt fate, little girl." The restaurant didn't just fall silent, it ceased to draw breath. Lucia's was a pocket of the old world on Chicago's Orchard Street, a theater of dark wood and starched linens where wine exceeded rent. For Isabella Rossi, this was a nightly battleground. She moved between demanding clientele, temperamental chefs, and the staff's quiet power dynamics with masterful precision. She was quick, astute, her smile a preemptive defense against complaints. Yet this facade was armor, concealing a woman sculpted by pure desperation. Her life was a study in contrasts. By night, she delivered expensive pasta to patrons for whom $1,000 was pocket change. By day, she paced the sterile corridors of St. Jude's Hospital, where her younger brother, Marco, battled an enigmatic illness that had exhausted their insurance. The astronomical cost of medicine, specialists, and endless procedures formed a mountain of debt she scaled alone. Marco was her only remaining family. Their parents existed only in a faded photograph. She would undertake any measure to ensure he lived. That anything had solidified into a core of unyielding resolve. This Tuesday evening felt particularly oppressive, the atmosphere heavy with an impending storm. The dining room's sparseness was an ill omen that unsettled the staff. A quiet evening meant the few present patrons would demand regal treatment. Her manager, Mr. Henderson, a man with a perpetually apologetic posture, was nervously buffing silverware. "He's coming, Chloe," a fellow waitress and Bella's sole confidant whispered, her tray trembling as she passed. Bella understood precisely who he signified. The entire ambiance of Lucia's shifted the moment Alessandro Moretti entered. The atmospheric pressure would plummet, conversation would evaporate. Even the kitchen's din seemed to self-censor. He was a myth clad in a bespoke suit, known to the press as a private investor. The streets, however, knew the unvarnished truth. He was the sovereign of the Moretti crime syndicate, the unseen hand guiding the city's underworld. He never booked a table. He simply materialized. And this evening, he was accompanied. At his side was Vincenzo Gallo, his ever-present shadow, a man whose tailored suit failed to conceal his brutish nature. A third man, unfamiliar to Bella, joined them. He was older, with slicked silver hair and a palpable tremor of fear. He bore the aspect of a man taking his final walk. They occupied table 12, the corner booth within Bella's assigned section. "Bella, that table is yours," Henderson murmured, his gaze fixed to the floor. "Be swift and flawless." "I understand the protocol, Mr. Henderson," Bella replied, her voice devoid of emotion. She collected her notepad, drew a single deep breath, and began her approach. "Good evening, gentlemen," she offered, her tone a perfect blend of courtesy and detachment. She fixed her gaze on the wall just above their heads. the standard procedure for serving men of their standing. Vinnie Gallo offered a grunt. The silver-haired man appeared on the verge of collapse. Alessandro Moretti, in contrast, remained utterly still. Bella felt his stare, not the leering appraisal of drunken financiers, but something different. It was analytical, weighty, the gaze of a predator surveying his domain. He was younger than the legends suggested, perhaps in his mid-30s. His face was a collection of sharp, forbidding angles, his jaw firm and his dark eyes seeming to absorb all light. A faint white scar bisected his left eyebrow, the sole flaw on an otherwise perfect, severe visage. "Your usual Mr. Moretti?" she inquired, her focus held by the distant wall. "My associate will order first." His voice emerged, a low, smooth baritone tinged with an Italian accent, like velvet pulled over rough stone. The silver-haired man, whom she would later identify as Salvatore Bianchi, haltingly requested plain spaghetti, no starter. It was the order of a child or a man facing his end. "And for you, Mr. Moretti?" "The bistecca, prepared rare, and a bottle of the 2008 Solaya. Also, bring him," he gestured to Bianchi. "A premium whiskey. The man appears to be in need." "Immediately, sir." She pivoted, every muscle taut with tension, and retreated. She could feel his gaze tracking her progress all the way to the kitchen entrance. "He's watching you," Chloe hissed, securing a fresh tray. "He's looking through me," Bella corrected. "This was never about dinner." She was absolutely right. The strain at table 12 was a tangible entity coiling in the air. When the meal arrived, Bella served with robotic detachment. Bianchi's whiskey remained untouched. Moretti carved his steak with surgical precision, his movements slow and methodical, as if he commanded time itself. Their exchange was a subdued murmur, Moretti's deep tones a counterpoint to Bianchi's increasingly agitated whispers. Bella maintained her distance, polishing glassware at the service bar, every fiber of her being on high alert. Her role demanded she be deaf and blind, but the energy was too potent to ignore. It was the absolute stillness that precedes a predator's strike. She observed Bianchi push a white envelope across the table. Moretti did not acknowledge it. He simply continued to eat. Then Bianchi's voice broke, escalating with raw desperation. Salvatore Bianchi's plea was a desperate gambit against a foregone conclusion. Moretti's response, quiet yet glacial, rippled through the dining room, a signal of his authority. The rules of their world, he reminded Salvatore, were absolute. Bianchi's offering, an envelope of restitution, was a futile gesture against the debt of betrayal. Moretti's pause was ritualistic, the placement of cutlery marking a shift from civility to judgment. His eyes, void-like in the candlelight, held the verdict as he echoed the request with a chilling softness. "Walk away." The transgression was framed not as theft, but as a violation of dominion. Moretti's calm accusation reduced Bianchi to vermin, an infestation to be purged. His whisper, a theater of menace, permeated the room, pronouncing judgment. The crystal glass in his hand became an instrument of impending violence, a focal point for Bianchi's primal terror. The ensuing chaos was a symphony of fear, freezing the patrons. As others sought refuge, Bella remained an observer, her gaze fixed on the predator's unwavering hand, a study in controlled lethality. The act was imminent. Here, publicly, he was about to smash the glass into the man's face. He would ruin the man, demolish the restaurant's name, and Bella would lose her job. And if her job was gone, Marco, the resolve in her gut sharpened to a shard of ice. She did not deliberate. She reacted. Bella moved with a speed that startled even herself. The cloth fell from her hand as she covered the 10 feet to table 12 in 3 long strides. Her hand shot out, her fingers closing around Alessandro Moretti's wrist. It felt like seizing solid marble. The contact sent a powerful shock through her. His skin was warm, the muscles beneath like taut steel cables, his bone structure unyielding. His hand, which clutched the heavy glass, was halted mere inches from its intended target. An immense, ringing quiet descended upon the room, broken only by the soft chiming of the chandelier. Vinnie Gallo was already rising, his hand reaching into his jacket, his expression a mask of violent shock. Salvatore Bianchi was ashen, frozen in a partial crouch, but Bella saw only Alessandro Moretti. He turned his head with unnerving slowness. His dark eyes met hers. There was no rage in them. Not yet. Only a profound, cold, boundless astonishment. It was the look of a monarch struck by a commoner, of a deity defied by a mortal. He remained silent, his gaze locked with hers. His focus drifted down to her hand on his wrist, a simple, working woman's hand, with short nails and a small, faded burn scar. Then his eyes snapped back to her face. Bella's heart hammered against her ribs like a frantic drum, threatening to break free. The rush of adrenaline brought his features into sharp relief, the shadow of stubble on his jaw, the subtle lines near his eyes, the dark limbal ring of his iris. She knew, with absolute certainty, this was the most foolish, self-destructive action of her entire life. This man could extinguish her existence in a single breath. He could incinerate her world. He could reach Marco. But all she could visualize was Marco's pale face on a hospital pillow and the stack of red stamped bills on her counter. This position represented her final strand of hope, a line she would not relinquish to this man, this embodiment of menace, regardless of his wealth or influence. "Sir," she began, her voice quivering yet encased in frost, "we have a policy against such language here." The scar above Moretti's left eye tightened. He was a monument to latent violence, poised on the brink of eruption. Bella's grip on him did not yield. The tableau was one of sheer absurdity. A 120-pound server confronting the city's most formidable figure. Yet she refused to yield. "You are unsettling our guests. My colleagues are terrified, and you are about to cost me my job." She leaned closer, her voice descending to a raw, potent whisper meant only for him. "I don't care who you are, and it is of no concern to me what he," she gestured toward Bianchi with her eyes, "did to earn your ire. You will not conclude this matter in this establishment. Do not test me." The words hung in the air, charged particles that shocked the entire room into absolute stillness. "Do not test me," she reiterated, a clear and final warning. At last, Vinnie Gallo intervened. "Remove your hand from him," he snarled, revealing the cold, dark steel of a firearm from his coat. "Vinnie," Moretti stated. The name was spoken softly, yet it impacted the room with immense gravity. Vinnie froze, his hand fused to his weapon. Then Alessandro Moretti's complete and total focus returned to Bella. His gaze conducted a slow, meticulous survey of her features. He noted her eyes, a volatile fusion of hazel defiance and profound fear, with another quality he could not identify. He observed her mouth, set in a rigid, unyielding line. He could perceive the terror, the frantic pulse hammering in her throat, yet she demonstrated an absolute refusal to break. Her hand remained clamped to his wrist, its pressure unwavering. Men had faced him with blades and firearms. He had been cursed by rivals and petitioned by politicians, but never, not once, had a waitress defied him. He had never been warned. A corner of his mouth curled. It was not a smile. It was something infinitely more unsettling. It was fascination. In a slow, measured motion, his fingers uncurled from the glass. It slipped from his grasp. Bella, who had braced for a violent reaction, maintained her hold. The tumbler dropped 2 inches, its impact absorbed by the linen. A dull, final thud. It remained intact. Only then did she retract her hand, as if from a searing flame. Moretti, with deliberate slowness, massaged the flesh where her fingers had been. He looked at Bianchi, who was still whimpering. "Leave," he commanded, his voice devoid of all emotion. "Disappear, Salvatore, before my temper frays, and take your payment." His fingers flicked the envelope. "It is pitifully inadequate." Bianchi lunged for the envelope and scrambled from his seat, nearly tripping in his haste to escape. He fled the restaurant without his coat, the doors slam, echoing like a gunshot in the profound silence. Moretti's attention snapped back to Bella. The other patrons resumed their conversations in low, anxious murmurs. Mr. Henderson peered from the kitchen, his face a pale mask of sheer terror. Bella held her position, her fists clenched. She had either just achieved a victory or had just authorized her own execution. The distinction was perilously fine. Moretti reached inside his jacket. A minute, involuntary flinch was her only concession. He paused, registering her reaction. Yet he was not retrieving a weapon. He produced a thick black wallet and extracted a sheaf of $100 bills, too numerous to count instantly. He placed them on the table, a sum that made the cost of his meal seem like loose change. Then he rose. He was a large man, over 6 feet tall, and his shadow completely enveloped her. Bella merely angled her chin upward, denying him any sign of intimidation. He adjusted his cuffs. "The steak was superb, Isabella," he murmured. A current of ice coursed through Bella's system. He was aware of her name. While her name tag was visible, his pronunciation of Isabella made it sound like a dark pronouncement, or perhaps a vow. He and Vinny proceeded to the exit. Vinny cast a look back at her, his expression pure malice, a silent pledge of future retribution. Moretti, however, did not glance back. He departed, and the small bell above the door chimed, an absurdly bright sound against the oppressive quiet. The instant the door clicked shut, Bella's strength failed her. She steadied herself against a booth, her body trembling as the adrenaline receded, leaving her cold and nauseated. "Bella, my goodness," Chloe whispered, approaching her quickly. "What have you done?" "That is Alessandro Moretti." "I am aware of who he is," Bella replied, her gaze fixed on the money. It was more than a month's rent, enough to cover Marco's next treatment. "You are terminated," Mr. Henderson shrieked, emerging from the kitchen. "You cannot address a patron in that manner, especially him. Rossi, you are fired." Bella faced him, her fear suddenly displaced by a severe cold rage. "You were cowering in the kitchen, Mr. Henderson. He was on the verge of assaulting a man. He was about to destroy your establishment. I safeguarded your property, and he settled his account." She indicated the money. Henderson's gaze shifted between the cash, Bella, and the door. The man was caught between 2 distinct forms of dread. "Just clear the table," he muttered, his authority having utterly evaporated. "And do not repeat that behavior ever again." He then retreated. Bella began to clear the dishes, her hands shaking so violently the china rattled. She had just confronted the lion within his own domain. She had provoked the beast. And as she collected the bills, a chilling realization struck her. The beast was not enraged. He was intrigued, and that was a far more terrifying prospect. The following days were a torment of sustained anxiety. Bella was perpetually on edge, startled by any sudden sound, by every vehicle that stopped nearby. She reported to work expecting dismissal, but Mr. Henderson actively avoided her gaze. She walked home anticipating an ambush from a dark alley, yet her journey was consistently uneventful, filled only with typical city noise. Nothing transpired. That was the most unnerving aspect. The absence of communication from Moretti's circle was more menacing than any explicit threat. It was like a serpent coiled and poised. Her confrontation at Table 12 became lore among the staff. They began calling her La Leonisa, the lioness, when they believed she was out of earshot. Chloe simply observed her with a mixture of reverence and fear. "I cannot fathom how you are still alive," she would say, while restocking salt shakers. "Neither can I," Bella would answer, her tone strained. She retained every dollar from Table 12. The total was slightly more than $2,000. She applied it to Marco's subsequent round of experimental injections at St. Jude's. The guilt of using illicit funds was nullified by the profound relief of seeing the invoice marked paid. When she visited him, she wore her most convincing artificial smile. "How is your shift, Bells?" he would ask, his voice faint, yet his smile bright against his gaunt features. "It was busy, Marco. It was productive. A customer left a very generous tip." She smoothed his hair, her heart a dead weight in her chest. "Your only job is to recover. I will handle all the rest." "You are the greatest, Bells. What would I ever do?" "Hush, do not entertain such thoughts," she said, the smile feeling like a brittle facade. "I have you." The deception felt like ash on her tongue. She had nothing. She was suspended by a single fragile thread, and she was certain Alessandro Moretti held the shears. 1 week later, on a Thursday, he returned. The restaurant was at capacity. Bella was balancing a full tray when she perceived it, a palpable shift in the room's atmosphere. She looked up. He was at the host stand. He was by himself. No Vinny, no associates, just him, attired in a charcoal suit that likely cost more than her vehicle. The hostess, a university student named Sophie, was trembling noticeably. "Mr. Moretti, a delight," Mr. Henderson said, hurrying over with an air of nervous servility. "A table for you, sir. Our finest, right this way." "No." Moretti's voice cleanly severed Henderson's effusive chatter. His gaze bypassed the manager, scanning the room until it settled on her. He made eye contact with Bella, and the barest trace of a smile formed on his lips. "I will wait for a table in her section." The tray in Bella's hands suddenly felt as if it were cast from lead. He was requesting her. Table 12 was taken by a family. The sole vacancy in her area was a small 2-person table near the wall. "Certainly," Henderson stammered. "Table 9. Isabella, Mr. Moretti is at table 9. Bella offered a curt nod, her expression a mask of professional neutrality. She delivered the entrees, took a brief moment to compose herself in the kitchen, and then re-entered the fraught environment. He was already situated, one leg crossed elegantly over the other, perusing the wine list as if he were a frequent patron. As she neared, he raised his head. "Isabella," he purred, his voice a low rumble. "It is a pleasure to see you again. I am glad Mr. Henderson possessed the wisdom to retain you." So he was aware. He knew Henderson had attempted to fire her. He knew the entire narrative. "Good evening, Mr. Moretti," she managed to say, her notepad poised. "May I bring you something to drink?" "A 97 Brunello. And what is your recommendation for the main?" He was manipulating her. This was his stage. She could have indicated the most expensive item, but she understood that was not the true nature of his test. Her steady voice, discussing osso buco braised for 8 hours, was a facade of normalcy over a chasm of tension. For the next 2 hours, a silent war of attrition was waged. He performed the role of a model patron, his quiet politeness a disarming form of psychological pressure. The leather-bound book was a prop. His true focus never wavered. Her every movement was catalogued by a gaze that was not of lust, but of acquisition. The same predatory assessment he'd leveled at Salvatore Bianchi. It was the look of a collector who had identified his next prize. His observation was forensic, an attempt to deconstruct her very essence. He savored the ambient terror he projected, a subtle ripple effect across the establishment. When the meal concluded, she presented the bill. He finally closed his book and posed the central question. Her reason for intervening. Bella feigned ignorance. He specified her defiance at table 12, a choice he framed as a reckless gamble for a man like Bianchi. She offered a protocol-based excuse, but her gaze told a different story. Fear, now alloyed with defiance. "I did it for me, Mr. Moretti. Your disruption threatened my livelihood, my income, perhaps my position itself. This role is fundamental to my existence." "Important?" he echoed, his finger tapping the book. "For your brother, Marco, the one at St. Jude's." At that moment, Bella's world froze. The notepad slipped from her grasp, its clatter loud in the silence. She made no move to retrieve it. "How could you know that?" she breathed, her voice trembling with a new, deeper horror. "Knowing things is my function, Isabella," he stated softly, his rare autoimmune condition, the treatments costing $24,000 each. Your 2 jobs, this and data entry, to manage the cost. And I am also aware that your efforts are falling short. He possessed her most guarded vulnerability. This had ceased to be a simple confrontation. It was a vivisection of her life. He had laid her open, exposing her very soul for examination. "What is your objective?" she asked, her voice fracturing. "My objective is comprehension," he replied, leaning closer. "You had the most to forfeit in this room, yet you alone chose to oppose me. You placed your hand on my arm. You denied me. It has been a significant time since I was denied without immediate consequence. You are either a woman of profound courage or profound foolishness." "I am merely desperate," she confessed, the admission tearing free. "And desperation inspires irrational acts." "Indeed," he concurred, his eyes darkening with a kind of empathy more terrifying than his rage. "It certainly does." He rose, leaving a vastly disproportionate sum of money. Standing beside her, his proximity was an invasion, his expensive cologne of sandalwood and bergamot filling the air. "This world offers no clemency, Isabella," he murmured, his voice a conspiracy meant only for her. "It is unconcerned with lone lionesses. The hyenas inevitably will claim you." With that, he departed. Bella remained immobilized for a long minute, her heart a frantic drum of panic. It wasn't a threat he had delivered, but a complete deconstruction of her being. He had demonstrated, with brutal clarity, his capacity to infiltrate every aspect of her existence, from her workplace to her brother's hospital room. The psychological campaign was underway. His goal was not her death, but her methodical dismantling. He returned 2 nights later, and the next, consistently alone and always seated in her section. He would sample new dishes, drink fine wine, and read, and he would observe. No further personal words were exchanged between them. He simply watched. Her colleagues began to treat her station like a quarantined zone. Patrons afforded his table a wide berth. Bella felt like a specimen displayed for the private amusement of one man. Her gratuities from other tables began to plummet. Proximity to her was now perceived as a risk, as if she were contaminated. Moretti, predictably, overcompensated, his tips covering any financial loss. Yet this was an exercise in power, not currency. He was systematically isolating her, contracting her world until he was its sole inhabitant. The precarious structure of Bella's life started to collapse 2 weeks after her initial encounter with Alessandro Moretti. The illness she had described to all, the one she had even accepted as reality, was revealed to be a tragic fabrication. She arrived at St. Jude's. It was a clear Wednesday morning as she arrived with coffee, prepared for Marco's treatment session. She was instead intercepted in the lobby by Dr. Lena Hansen, a woman whose kindness was matched by her directness. "Isabella, may I speak with you in my office?" Dr. Hansen's expression was grave. A cold apprehension gripped Bella. "Is he all right?" "Physically, Marco is stable. He has been discharged." "Discharged? That's impossible. His session is today." "No, Isabella, it is not," the doctor corrected, guiding her into a small clinical office. "He has been neglecting his treatments for weeks. He registers for his appointments, then he departs. He hasn't received an infusion in nearly a month." Bella felt the foundation of her reality shift. "What? That can't be. I remitted payment. Where is he?" "That is the secondary issue." Dr. Hansen paused before sliding a creased document across the desk, a receipt from a check-cashing establishment. A staff member noticed this. "Isabella, Marco does not have an autoimmune disease. We conducted a new panel of tests last month. He suffers from anemia and malnutrition, but the symptoms he has been simulating are consistent with withdrawal. We suspect a severe gambling addiction." The concepts failed to connect. Gambling, not Marco. He's ill. "He is ill," Dr. Hansen affirmed with compassion, "but his illness is addiction. He fabricated the symptoms to extract funds from you. The narrative about experimental procedures was a complete deception. He has been systematically taking your earnings and losing them to wagers." Bella's gaze remained fixed on the paper slip. The color drained from her face, leaving a profound, cold emptiness. The thousands of dollars, the grueling double shifts, the relentless, crushing stress. All of it had been for an elaborate lie. She departed the hospital in a dissociative state, moving without direction. She eventually found herself at their derelict apartment. He was present. The space was in utter disarray. Marco was on the sofa, trembling, his eyes wide with panic. "Bella, I can explain everything." "You deceived me," she whispered, the numbness hardening into a glacial fury. The entire time, the hospital, the procedures, all of it was a fiction. "I was in too deep, Bells," he wept, tears coursing down his cheeks. "It began with small amounts, but then I lost. I kept chasing the losses, only to sink deeper. I took the money, I admit it. I just had to break even. I intended to repay you every single dollar." "Repay it with what, Marco?" she yelled, the sound raw and torn from her throat. "I have been destroying myself working. I confronted him for you." "I know, but Bella, they are going to injure me." "Who? Who's going to injure you?" "The man I owe. He's not a financial institution. The debt is $50,000, Bella. He gave me until this evening. If I fail to pay, he will shatter my legs or worse. $50,000? The sum was so staggering it bordered on the absurd. It was a verdict delivered in shadow. Who is it? Marco. The name he uttered, Bianchi, was a keystone dropping into place, revealing the horrifying architecture of a trap. This wasn't a simple debt. It was an incursion into a rival's domain. Moretti's earlier words, "The hyenas come," now echoed not as a warning, but as a prophecy he had engineered. He had observed Marco's vulnerabilities, identified his creditor, and simply waited for the inevitable collapse. In that moment of chilling clarity, Bella commanded, "Stay here," her voice a mask of calm over a mind ablaze. She didn't flee from the problem. She ran toward its source. Financially ruined and cornered, she sought the one man who could navigate this labyrinth, the puppeteer at the center of her predicament. Lacking his location, she ran the 2 miles to Lucia's, the only known node in his network. She appeared at the door, a specter of panic long before her shift. "Where is he?" she demanded of Mr. Henderson. "Alessandro Moretti!" His denial was transparent. When Chloe intervened, Bella's composure fractured. "He knows," she articulated, her voice a mix of tears and fury. "He orchestrated this entire thing. I have to find him." She was running to her captor, seeking salvation. She erupted onto the street, a frantic vessel adrift without a course. On the pavement, the city's weight crushed down, stealing her breath. In that moment, a long black Maserati Quattroporte glided to a perfect stop before her. The rear window descended, revealing Alessandro Moretti, his expression a placid mask. "Get in the car, Isabella," he said, the command as casual as a simple question. She obeyed instantly, pulling the door open and sinking into the fine leather. The vehicle, scented of sandalwood and affluence, pulled away. "You knew," she accused, her voice a low tremor of rage. "You knew everything about Marco." "His addiction, the debt he owed Bianchi. And you observed, night after night, anticipating this exact collapse." "I did," he conceded, his eyes tracking the blur of city lights. "You allowed this to happen. You could have intervened." "Intervened?" He finally faced her, his gaze an icy flame. "Bianchi is a rival. Your brother's foolishness was his own burden, not mine, until it entangled you. And now I'm entangled. They will ruin him, and you are responsible." "He is responsible," Moretti corrected, his tone razor sharp. "For his choices, his deceptions." He paused. "But you are not a choice, and you do not deceive." The car entered a private, gated drive leading to a monumental mansion on the water's edge. "What do you require of me?" she whispered, her defiance dissolving into a cold, heavy sense of dread. He watched her for a long, quiet moment. $50,000. That is his liability. I can make it vanish." He snapped his fingers. "Just so. I contact Bianchi. I assume your brother's debt, and I ensure his continued existence." "And the cost?" she asked, already certain the price would be her soul. The car stopped. He turned his entire body to her. "I am a collector, Isabella. I acquire rare objects, art, cars, and people, and I find you to be exceptionally rare. You possess defiance. You have loyalty to the undeserving, and you do not fear me, not fundamentally." "I am terrified of you." "No," he countered with the ghost of a smile. "You are terrified of what I represent, of your own failure to save him. The fear is not of me. I desire that quality. I desire that fire, that complete devotion." "What is it that you want me to do?" "You will begin to work for me," he stated flatly. Your new role is my personal aide. You will reside here. You will oversee my public affairs, my assets. You will remain at my side. You will inhabit my world. In return, your brother's obligation is erased. He will be sent to the finest recovery facility in the nation. He will be protected, and you will belong to me. It was not a proposition, it was a declaration. A gilded prison, Bella breathed, her eyes on the opulent fortress. A prison is a prison, he concurred, but this one provides a view of the world, and you will be safe. The wolves will be gone, only the lion remains. She pictured Marco, trembling. She saw Bianchi's enforcers. She felt the weight of it all. Alessandro Moretti had waited for her world to shatter, and now he was the only one offering to reconstruct it, but in his own warped image. Do we have an agreement, Isabella Rossi? He asked. She looked at this deadly, brilliant man. She had no moves left on the board. He had been playing an entirely different game. Yes, she choked out, her voice hollowed out. We have a deal. The shift from her old life to the new was brutally efficient. Alessandro Moretta operated with the precision of a warlord. Within 1 hour of her acceptance, 2 events were initiated. Vinnie Gallo was dispatched to settle Marco's debt with Salvatore Bianchi, a negotiation paid in intimidation, not cash. At that same time, 2 of Moretti's silent-suited men arrived for Marco. She was afforded 5 minutes for a goodbye. Bella, where are they taking me? Marco panicked, his eyes wild. You are going to a clinic in Vermont, Bella said, her voice flat, utterly numb. You're going to get well, Marco. This is your single chance. But the money? It is handled, she stated. How? What did you do? He asked, grabbing her arm. You went to Moretti? Bella, you cannot do this. I had to, she said, pulling free. You presented no other alternative. Now go, recover. That is your only method of repayment. She watched them escort him away. No tears fell. Only a vast hollow ache filled her. She had saved him by selling herself. With 1 bag packed, her old apartment already felt alien. The black Maserati was waiting. It carried her back to the Moretti compound. The estate was not a home. It was a statement of power. A modern Gothic fortress of dark glass and stone that dominated the churning waters of Lake Michigan. Inside, it was a museum of cold luxury. Black marble, vast empty halls, and priceless art under a stormy sky. It was magnificent, sterile, and soulless. She was given a suite in a private wing, grander than her old life, with a closet already filled with clothes. It was a cage of silk and stone. Her first day was a blur of introductions. She met Mrs. Petrova, the severe housekeeper who ruled the state with silent efficiency, and eyed Bella with deep suspicion. She was given a laptop, a new phone, and a mountain of files. You will manage my public-facing operations, Alessandro stated from across his immense minimalist office. The space was defined by a polished desk and a massive window overlooking the lake. The board meetings, the charity events, my travel arrangements, you will be the barrier between me and the legitimate world. And the illegitimate one? She dared to ask. A slight twitch at his mouth. Vinnie handles that. You are to have no part. Your hands will remain clean. That is my stipulation. I am meticulous about separating my worlds. But they were not separate. They bled together. The men at his logistics meetings had the same dead eyes as Vinnie Gallo. The charity galas were elaborate showcases of influence where public figures offered tight, forced smiles. Bella soon realized her role was not scheduling, but surveillance. She was his shadow. Her mind, conditioned by chaos, adapted with ease. She learned to anticipate him, to interpret micro-expressions, to know when to speak and when to disappear. And then came Sofia Carbone. The daughter of a New York boss, she had, according to Vinny, been circling Alessandro for years. She was a striking woman with dark hair and a wardrobe of lethal elegance. She moved through the estate as if it were her own and looked at Bella as if she were dirt. Alessandro caro, Sophia purred, entering his office as they reviewed reports. She ignored Bella, leaning over his shoulders, her hand resting on his chest. You've been dodging my calls. I thought we had plans. I have been occupied, Sophia, Alessandro replied, his focus on the report, his body tensing. He pushed her hand aside. Sophia's poisonous glare landed on Bella. Busy with your little stray, she spat. She stinks of cheap pasta. Bella flinched but remained silent. Isabella is my assistant and far more competent than your last three, Alessandro said, his tone like ice as he removed Sophia's hand. We are working. The rejection was stark. Sophia's face hardened, her smile vanishing. She gave Bella a look that promised retribution. Of course, darling. Business? She purred, her eyes arctic. She exited with a theatrical sway. Bella broke the quiet immediately. You should be wary of her. Sophia is a child playing dress-up, Alessandro dismissed. She is a serpent with her father's backing, Bella countered, surprising herself. That glimmer of interest reappeared in his eyes. You see that. Good. She is a problem I will address. Now, regarding these shipping contracts, he was evaluating her, promoting her from functionary to strategist. The fear was being supplanted by cold calculation. She was learning to think like him. Yet the true danger was their constant proximity, working late into the evening. She saw the powerful Don and also the weary man beneath. Late nights in the library they would speak. Not of business, but of books, of the city, of anything but their reality. A powerful current grew between them, a magnetic pull she fought against. He was her captor, the man who had cornered her, but he was also the one who respected her mind and, in his own corrupt way, offered her protection. Consider this. He has never acted improperly, never uttered a vulgar word. Their arrangement was predicated on fidelity, not intimacy, yet the atmosphere is charged. During a turbulent night, with the windows rattling, he poses the question while gazing into his whiskey. You no longer fear me, do you? I have simply grown accustomed to you, Bella retorts, closing her laptop. That is not a response. And what of the hatred, Isabella? For the pact I compelled you to accept? She finally meets his gaze. The man who methodically and dispassionately deconstructed her entire existence. I despise the method, she states, indicating the luxurious cage he built for her. I despise that you weaponized my brother's weakness to ensnare me. He presses closer to the core of the issue, his gaze unwavering. But do you despise me? Bella pauses. I don't know, Alessandro. My existence is about survival. I understand you are a monster. I have seen Vinny's files. I never claimed to be a saint, he concedes. But, she continues, her tone softening, you saved Marco. He's in treatment. He's safe. A monster accomplished that. How can my hatred be absolute? It is not so simple. He turns to watch the storm break over the water, a reflection of their own turmoil. Simplicity does not exist in my world, Isabella. Only gradients of shadow. You are beginning to perceive them. He advises her to rest. As she reaches the door, he stops her. Isabella, he says, you are the only one in this place who offers me the truth. The only one with that courage. Never lose it. For a moment, she studies this formidable, isolated man, framed by the storm. She departs silently, and as the door closes, a startling thought emerges. Her prison is beginning to feel like the last bastion of safety in her world. Bella acclimates to her new reality with unsettling efficiency. Managing Alessandro's schedule becomes routine, but the weekly calls with Marco are her anchor to sanity, the one factor that makes her gilded prison tolerable. A single conversation, however, introduces a lethal doubt. Marco recalls the loan shark materialized as if from nowhere, saying, "It felt like he knew I was at my breaking point." The idea takes root. When Alessandro departs for a 2-day trip, Bella recognizes her opportunity. The empty estate is a field of inquiry. She must uncover the truth, which lies within his biometric sealed office, the single forbidden space. She had impulsively kept the whiskey glass from the night of the storm. Now, a symbol of their strange intimacy becomes a tool. She carefully lifts his fingerprint and applies it to the scanner. The lock disengages. Inside, she finds his private records. Having observed him, she knows the key is hidden in a false-bottomed cigar box. She locates the file for his rival, Bianchi, and within it, a folder bearing her own family name, Rossi. What it contains is suffocating: surveillance photos, her stolen personnel file, and 2 documents that serve as the conspiracy's core. First, a payment to Vinnie Gallo to monitor her brother. Second, a handwritten memo from Vinnie to Alessandro dated before she ever sought his aid. "Boss," it says, "the asset is primed. Bianchi's man made contact. The brother is taking the bait and will be submerged in debt within a month. Bianchi will assume it's his own play. He gains leverage, and you gain her." Her entire reality fractures. This was no string of misfortune. It was an architectural blueprint for her family's ruin. As rage consumes her, the front door opens. Alessandro is back early. She moves to confront him, the note clutched in her hand like a weapon. "You deceived me," she erupts, her voice raw with betrayal. "You gain her. Does that sound familiar?" Alessandro's expression becomes a perfect void. He does not deny it. "You were in my office. You constructed this cage before I knew I was captive," she accuses, tears of fury tracing paths down her face. "You allowed them to break my brother simply to possess me." He attempts to reframe the narrative. "It was Vinny's strategy. I only required an opening to protect you. He used a sledgehammer." "And you permitted it?" She weeps. Before he can answer, his secure phone chimes. He listens, and his entire posture stiffens. "What? Where? I am coming now." Disconnecting the call, his face becomes a death mask. "That was Vinny. Bianchi discovered the manipulation? He believes you were complicit. He has retaliated, collected the debt." "What are you saying?" "He has taken Marco from the clinic." Bianchi had unraveled the scheme and seized Marco, demanding a trade. Bella for her brother. Alessandro's response is absolute. "I do not negotiate for my people." As he and Vinny prepare to assault the Kenosha shipyard, Bella refuses to be sidelined. "He is my brother. I am coming." She waits in the vehicle until a single gunshot shatters the night. She spills out of the car and into the unfolding chaos. A sniper has Marco targeted. "No!" she screams. Alessandro hurls himself before Marco, a human shield, as Vinny permanently neutralizes Bianchi. In the ensuing escape, Alessandro hands her 2 passports and a bank confirmation. "Go to Italy, start a new life. It's the only way I can ensure your safety." He is offering her an exit. At the private airstrip, as a jet engine whines, Bella helps Marco ascend the stairs. She is unbound, but she pauses, looking back at Alessandro. Her decision hangs suspended. Her brother is safe. A new world before her, yet the monster who built her cage, then bled to shatter it, stands watching. He waits. He has granted her the one thing he vowed she would never possess. A choice, liberty or him. The narrative is not concluded. What is the correct path? To accept the fortune and flee, or to return to the intricate darkness she knows? This is the kind of precipice that can redefine a person if you must know what lies beyond this moment. If the paradox of Isabella and Alessandro has captured your intellect, then engage with this analysis. Affirm it with a like. Share it with others who appreciate moral complexity. And subscribe. We analyze every comment, so tell me, which direction does her story truly bend? This is a question we must explore together.
Chicago seemed to breathe differently around men like Alessandro Moretti. The air tightened when he entered a room as though even silence knew its place in his presence. Lucia's Ristorante with its candlelight and polished glasses had always been a theater of elegant pretenses. Wealth performed ease there. Power performed refinement. But on the night Isabella Rossi placed her hand on Moretti's wrist and told him no, the theater cracked open and revealed the machinery beneath. Fear, hierarchy, violence, and the trembling fragility of ordinary people trying to survive among predators. She was only a waitress to those who looked too quickly. A slim woman in a pressed uniform moving between white tablecloths with the precision of someone who could not afford mistakes. But hardship had sculpted her into something harder than appearances allowed. She was held together by necessity. Her brother's supposed illness had made every hour of her life transactional. Night belonged to labor. Day belonged to hospital corridors, invoices, and hope stretched almost to breaking. Her love was practical. It took the form of tips folded into envelopes, shoes worn thin on bus station pavement, meals skipped in private so that money might last another week. Then came the moment that altered the shape of everything. Moretti, seated beneath the low amber glow of table 12, had all the stillness of a drawn blade. Men around him spoke in lowered voices and unfinished sentences. The restaurant staff moved like worshippers in the shadow of a private god. And when he prepared to destroy Salvatore Bianchi in full view of the dining room, Isabella moved not because she was fearless, but because fear had long ago become less important than consequence. If she lost that job, the whole trembling structure of her life would collapse. So she crossed the room, she stopped his hand, and for one suspended breath, the world stared at the impossible. A tired young woman holding violence in place through sheer defiance. In a lesser story, that would have been victory. But tragedy is not made from moments of courage alone. It is made from the price they demand afterward. The days that followed were not loud. No bullets shattered her windows. No one dragged her into an alley. Instead came attention. Quiet, sustained, exquisitely focused attention. Moretti returned to the restaurant not in wrath, but in curiosity. He looked at her as a collector looks at an object that should not exist, a rare contradiction, something delicate and unyielding at once. He learned her name, then her brother's name, then the truth of her debts and burdens. With each visit, he did what the most dangerous men do best. He reduced the distance between fascination and possession. The revelation about Marco struck not like thunder, but like the slow collapse of a ceiling. He was not dying in the way she had believed. He was drowning in addiction, deception, and debt. Every sacrifice she had made for him had been swallowed by gambling and lies. It is difficult to imagine a more intimate betrayal. The person for whom she had emptied herself was not merely flawed. He had become the vessel through which the world would break her open. And standing at the center of that ruin was Alessandro Moretti, calm as winter. He knew. He had known enough to wait, enough to understand that when the truth surfaced, she would come to him not because she trusted him, but because the world had been arranged so that she would have nowhere else to go. His offer was monstrous in its elegance. He would save Marco, he would erase the threat, he would build order where chaos had devoured her life. All she had to do was step into his house, into his system, into his carefully curated gravity. A mansion can be more tragic than a prison cell when it contains every comfort except the right to belong to oneself. Inside Moretti's estate, Isabella's life changed with brutal efficiency. Silk replaced exhaustion. Marble replaced cracked linoleum. Silence replaced the chaotic noise of poverty. But grief followed her there all the same. She became useful in new ways, managing schedules, observing meetings, navigating the refined surface of a world sustained by blood beneath polished floors. And somewhere in that transformation, something subtle and devastating occurred. She began to see Moretti not only as the architect of her captivity, but as a man. She saw the restraint in him, the loneliness, the rare moments when power seemed almost burdensome. He listened when she spoke. He respected what others dismissed. He protected, even as he possessed. That is what makes the tragedy unbearable. If he had been merely cruel, her soul might have found a clean direction. Hatred is painful, but it clarifies. Moretti did not clarify. He complicated. He turned her cage into the only place where the world seemed not to bite. He made safety feel intimate. He allowed gratitude to grow in the same soil as resentment. And because of that, Isabella was forced into the cruelest of all emotional landscapes, one in which her captor became inseparable from her survival. The lesson hidden in her sorrow is not that love is foolish, it is that love without boundaries becomes a form of self-burial. Isabella's devotion to Marco pushed her into ruin. Her growing attachment to Moretti threatened to dissolve the memory of how that ruin had been designed. Human beings are vulnerable not only to violence but to beautifully staged necessity. They can be made to step willingly into cages if the alternative is watching someone they love die in the dark. Yet the story does not flatten Moretti into symbolism alone. He too moves like a tragic figure, though not an innocent one. He is a man whose instincts have been shaped by power until desire itself becomes acquisitive. He does not know how to love without enclosing. He does not know how to protect without claiming. Even when he sacrifices, even when he offers freedom, he does so as a man who has spent his life rearranging reality according to his will. His tenderness is real perhaps, but it is malformed by dominance. So when Isabella stands at the edge of freedom with escape before her and Moretti behind her like a shadow she cannot quite sever, the moment does not ask whom she loves, it asks what remains of her after everything has been taken, saved, bought, endangered, and complicated. The answer is not simple because tragedy never rewards simplicity. It leaves its characters alive enough to continue hurting. And so her story teaches what the best tragedies always teach, that survival can be costly, that tenderness can be dangerous, and that the most beautiful prisons are the ones built by a person who truly believes he is saving what he has already stolen.